I used to be his guitar, he said, in his soft voice that buzzed and tickled at my ear. Jimmy's, I mean. The wind carried the words away and we sped on towards the cheerful rest convalescent home. Where the fuck was Dad? I'm going to skip on to another place. I'm at about 20 minutes, aren't I? So I'll just read another little section and I should be done. We'd had to be cut free of our mother's womb. She'd never been able to push the two-headed sport that was me and Genvi out the usual way. Simbies were slippery in the ways of the flesh, but Mom was still human at the time, hadn't yet been exiled to the waters. So for just a few days, she was kind of sidelined while she recovered from the surgery. That gave Dad's family the opening they needed to move in and take over. Because from their perspective, things were a mess. Genvi and I were fused, you see, conjoined twins. Genvi's head, torso, and left arm protruded from my chest. We shared a heart and liver and had only one kidney and 3.5 legs between us. We had 2 stomachs and enough colon for us each to have a viable section, come to that. But the lungs were mine. Genvi only got oxygen because she and I shared a bloodstream. She and I could have lived as we were, conjoined, but between us we had what we needed. But here's the real kicker. Genvi had the magic, and I didn't. Far as the family was concerned, Genvi was one of them, though cursed as I was with the tragic flaw of mortality. Genvi and me, my mom had brought us that gift. You might say that my dad married outside the family. To hear some of them tell it outside the species. Most of the family would barely give Mom the time of day when she was still around. They could have stood it if she were just some dalliance of Dad's, a bit of booty call. Even love would have been okay if they'd kept it to a dull roar. Wouldn't have been the first time that humans and their celestial cousins had knocked boots, but no, Mom and Dad had to go and breed. With Mom unable to interfere for the time being, the family decided that obviously the human doctors of the hospital where we were born had to surgically separate Genvi and me. They put pressure on my dad till he agreed to it. They're not venal, that lot, just too big for their britches. They've been emissaries of the big guy for so long that they forget that they aren't gods themselves, just glorified overseers. The second we were separated, Genvi began to die. There's a guardian that attends births and deaths. He keeps his eye on the young and on the old, the former having so recently left the other world for this one, and the latter soon to depart that way again. That guardian, you might say that he's a border guard. It's his job to send the living on their way and the dead on theirs. If it's not your time, you're not going anywhere. He was there, ready to do his job when Genvi and I were born, the semi-celestial child and our human donkey of a sister. Now it was time for him to escort her back across the barrier between the quick and the dead. He lingered over our cribs in intensive care for an instant. He smiled at us both, chucked us under our tiny chins. He thought we were kind of cute. Then he kissed us each on the forehead and gently picked Genvi up, cradled her in his arms. My dad, grieving, watched him. The guardian gave him a rueful look. Have I mentioned that the guardian is our uncle? Dad's brother. He took Genvi, leaving my dad to weep at my bedside. The guardian should have carried Genvi to the crossroads right away. Instead, he took her to my mom's room. He'd taken a shine to her uncle had, a real shine, the kind that sets brother against brother, starts family feuds. Mom was still dopey from the anesthetic, but Uncle took care of that. Plain old unconsciousness was no challenge for the being who shuffled humans from life to death like beads on an abacus. Even in her half-sleep, she'd been begging to see her babies, and now she was fully awake. This was her first time seeing Genvi. But when she clapped eyes on my uncle carrying a gasping, asymmetrical bundle whose little mouth pursed like my dad's, she figured out pretty quickly who the baby was and what was up. The guardian's impartial. He has to be. Normally, he wouldn't be put in the position of herding family across the borders between life and death, since the rest of that lot don't die. Not permanently, anyway. Mom begged him for Genvi's life. He replied, "There isn't enough of her to survive on this side of the gate. Mom was having none of it. She began making promises. But what does a human have to offer a demigod? She tried to swear her lifelong obedience. Uncle shook his head. In a way, he already has that from every mortal on this plane and the next. But still, he didn't leave with Genevieve. Mom's arms ached to hold her baby. She promised sex the best he'd had, and he's had some good stuff. He's not just Lord of the Grave, my uncle. All that born-in and dying business has given him a taste for the sweetest gifts of the flesh. My mom was fine, they tell me, and she knew what to do with what she got. How do you think she managed to catch the eye of not just one celestial, but two? Thing is, Uncle, for all his lechery, is pretty professional about his job. He shook his head, turned towards the door, but Mom spied the tear twinkling in his eye, and she knew she'd underestimated him. Sure, he liked doing the nasty plenty well, but save her, Mom said, and I'll love you. Uncle stopped. One hand on the door's crash bar, the other supporting Genevieve's 1.5-legged little rump. He knows lies, Uncle does. There's a propaganda machine that makes him out to be the prince of them. It's bullshit. Those are the same people that won't let their kids borrow fiction from the libraries. Stories aren't lies, people. Some of them are truer than any autobiography. But Uncle does know how lies taste. Refined sugar sweet, not molasses sweet like truth, with its sulphurous backbite. Mom was telling the truth. The room was treacly with it. If he saved her daughter, she would love him. She would love death itself, fiercely and hotly. What parent wouldn't, under the circumstances? Hell, I still love that fireman who saved my cat from my burning apartment, even after he turned out to be an asshole. But this story isn't about my sorry-ass love life. Uncle looked down at the child he was holding, at her piecemeal body and oddly canted face, her jaundiced skin going blue. She had my mom's eyes. We both do. Uncle turned. Mom reached her hand out, took his in it, her eyes brimming with hope, with love enough to fight for her child and more. I can't do it, Uncle whispered. She needs organs, tissues that I can't give her. I'm a ferryman. I can't make her live. I can, said my dad. He walked into Mom's room. Uncle tried to snatch his hand away from Mom's, but she held on and looked Dad full in the face. A mother's love is fierce with pride, and Mom was never one for regrets. Dad read the signs of what had gone on between them like spoor in the room. You want this? He asked Mom. Yes. Brother mine, said Dad, give me my child. His two eyes made four with Uncle's. In that moment, Dad's eyes were green, the bright green of new spring leaves. Gently, Uncle handed Genevieve over. Gently, Dad took her, his first time holding his baby. That was the moment that Uncle violated the border between this side and the next. For once he had taken a soul to himself, he wasn't ever supposed to hand it over until he had delivered it to its destination. If Uncle is a ferryman between the worlds, Dad is a gardener. His talents are growing, grafting, and pruning. Let me go then now, he said to his dog. Dad said to his brother. What? Said Mum, where are you taking her? Dad said, his voice full of loss. Can't fix her up here. We have to go to the next side. You stay and see to Vidya. He tried on a smile. We're going to bring her sister back to you before he could say Jack Mandora. Uncle embraced Dad. Their circled arms protected Genevieve. Mom had to look away from the brothers then. Their aspects were already changing, preparing to cross over to the other side. Mortals cannot look upon that celestial shift for long. It's like looking directly into the sun. Between the glory that was the brothers, dying Genevieve was a fleeting scrap of dull flesh. Then the three were gone. Mom clambered back into her bed, closed her eyes, and prayed for both her children. No point imploring the big guy. He has more important things to look after. As so many others do, Mom prayed to the celestials more directly involved in the affairs of this plane. In this case, her husband and her brother-in-law. Thank you.